This is the biggest movie that I've ever been a part of. It's just awesome. You know, we're shooting with some days with more than 500 extras in full battle gear, and they've been rehearsing for months. Among these hundreds of extras that we have, a lot of the stunts are being done by people that we recruited from the Shaolin Temple. They're just so talented and so brilliant to watch and so beautiful and graceful.
We'll work on that travel diagonal. Yeah.
There are a number of departments that are just really doing incredible work.
I think you're gonna look great doing that, Buster.
This set is one of the sets that really stood out for me, and it's gonna be on film for probably 18 seconds. And I've never been on a set that was this spectacular. Color out the grapes. You don't want your enemy to know you're getting old. We were really lucky that we got Laos Kasai to be our consultant on this because he's just the greatest in the world. He's a real master. This is the second fastest archer in the world.
Here is. Second.
He gave me so much more than just archery. Just sitting and talking to him and spending time with him, and the steadiness that's in him, and the way that he is in the world was really helpful for me when I was figuring out how to play this character. It's challenging because stuff can take longer because you got a translation. That creative dialogue takes longer. But I expected coming in that we'd have a lot bigger problems. Like we'd show up on a set and people would go, well, that's not what we asked for at all, you know, but there's been none of that. Oftentimes it's like little stuff and everybody just laughs and carries on.
We frankly pestered Matt for a long time and his folks about doing this, and there were some timing issues, and by some miracle it came together, and he has just been everything that you want him to be in a leading man. Everybody associated with the movie says two things consistently: what an amazing actor, and what a fantastic person who's just, you know, a great guy and has elevated everything about it. So we're very, very fortunate to have Matt starring in this movie for us.
Work, everybody.
3, 2, 1, action!
Johnny Mo is one of the best directors alive.
能和张艺谋导演合作是一个无法拒绝的事情。
What really makes me come running is a great director whose work that I've seen before.
We're all here for him. It's a great thing to be part of one of his visions.
I think everybody working on this film is a long-term admirer of Zhang Yimou and his long body of work.
And he's done some of the greatest movies to ever come out of China, from Raise the Red Lantern to House of Flying Daggers.
Hero, Curse of the Golden Flower.
One of the things that we wanted to do was to make a movie together. It was truly East and West.
And it is such a huge, huge film. And it does require so much, and it requires the ability to straddle the cultures and to tell a very Chinese story in a way an international audience will love it.
The challenge for us was combining traditional Chinese culture with Western filmmaking techniques, and Zhang Yimou was clearly the perfect director to achieve this.
His notes are great, you know. I get notes through a translator, but they're very specific and very clear, and the great directors are always very simple and clear with their direction.
And action!
He's very good at doing that thing that's so hard, and that is managing the huge set pieces as well as dealing with the actors, doing the little details.
我一直很清楚地记得，导演在片场一直会提醒我们一句话，就是当你内心有了，你的眼神一定有了。
He paints on this spectacularly large canvas, and he does it in a way that nobody else does.
He really is the one person who can compose a visual experience of that magnitude.
Many years ago, Zhang Yimou tried to tell me that movie is just like a magic picture frame. Inside the frame, anything can happen. Use your imagination. Don't limit yourself and let go.
最后还是要得到一个电影所要的，给你这样的一种了不起的感觉，这就是电影。我们叫大银幕，对吧？这是大银幕艺术。
They look nervous. It's a big wall to be so nervous.
We coordinate the visual effects out of legendary offices here in LA. So every day we work together on the visual effects, refining them, working out what exactly we need to see in every shot, and gradually refining those shots to make them look more and more real. So Industrial Light and Magic, that's where we're sort of basing the majority of the work. But there are a number of other companies in the world that are working through ILM to achieve the scale of effects that we need to do on this film. 3 frames out of every 4 involve some kind of visual effects. So it is quite a challenge, and they're not easy visual effect shots.
I mean, we're sitting next to 300 shipping containers that have basically created the largest outdoor green screen that I've ever seen.
The Great Wall in our movie is a lot bigger and taller and wider than the already very impressive real Great Wall. We created a fairly large stretch of wall to film everything on. Of course, that wall was not 100 feet high. It was about maybe 10 feet high. Pretty much any time you see that wall, we're both extending it down and extending it in both directions.
The Taotie they're not just a creation for the film, they are part of Chinese mythology.
But they're not the sort of creatures that have really been fully realized before. As with all creatures, you want to give it some kind of basis in reality and something that people can relate to. There's another thing where, we didn't want to make it look like any one particular animal. We explored, a lot of animals that can move relatively quickly. So a huge amount of work in this film went into developing very, very sophisticated crowd behavior, both for the soldiers and the creatures and for their interaction. We had to basically capture all these various actions, and that is statistically programmed so that all these people interact with each other in the right way, and so that's how thousands and thousands of soldiers are created from the few that we had as extras. Because the black powder is quite central to the plot of the film, the director really wanted to make it quite special. So we designed these weapons so that when they explode, they make kind of a donut-shaped explosion. And within the fog, this gives us quite a special sort of mix of the colors and gives us a very unusual event.
I think true epic adventure movies are becoming fewer and far between. The scope of the action, it's something beyond belief.
The film's centered around three key battles.
Zhang Yimou, our director, was very interested in having them quite different.
The first one is when Will and Tovar first get caught by the Nameless Order. They bear witness to the Taote's attack.
The Nameless Order is the ultimate fighting force, and they dedicate their lives to protecting the world and to being this last bastion of opposition.
And they all have specific jobs and they execute them perfectly. Just from a military standpoint, William and Tovar are extremely impressed.
In the beginning, it shows how efficient the Nameless Order are at preparing the defenses. They have all these elaborate fighting techniques or weapon systems that they all bring to the table.
In the first battle, for instance, we have large multi-fire crossbow machines.
And these crane women are just extraordinary. They dive off the top of the wall and do these incredible acrobatic flips in order to drive these extra long lances down towards the Taote as they're attacking.
Staging the battles with the imaginary Taotes has had its difficulties. These things are 6 foot wide, 10 foot long, and about 6 foot high. What you find happens is that people start fighting people. Visual effects have been kind enough to make a proxy-sized Taotei for us to try and work around so that we get an idea of how far we should be away from each other.
One more. In the first battle, William and Toba find themselves without weapons as the Taotei attack. So they have to get very inventive. They're desperately picking up whatever they can. Broken spears, shields from dead soldiers. And then there's a bit of a turn of the tide where Will sees a crossbow lying on the ground. The only problem is he hasn't used a crossbow before and doesn't really know how this repeating crossbow thing works. So instead of trying to learn it, he just goes straight for the bow. He smashes the crossbow apart and removes the bow from it. That's really the point where him and Toba start to get an advantage, and it seems like they might get through it.
我们的3场打，我自己认为都是非常好看的。原先的剧本，我看到的是全部是在长城上打完的。我是觉得，因为你在长城打3场就有点老，叫招式用老了，你就打不动了。所以我们在这个故事中就饕餮破了1次场。
In the second battle, which is set in the fog, Zhang Yimou really wanted to have this mysterious feel about the second battle. We built these very large, what we call harpoon guns.
One of the strategies from strategist Wong is the harpoon ballista used with a sedative to try and capture a Taotei.
They're trying to capture a Taotei, which doesn't quite go according to plan, so Will and Tova have to go down and save the day. So then we show how cunning they are and how brave.
I'm about to dive down a chain to kick the living you-know-what out of some Taotei. My hair clips? Yeah, there you go. It's not cool to do it with hair clips.
And then when William and Tova work together, it's almost like they've been in so many conflicts throughout the years that they actually don't even need to talk to each other. They're so in tune with each other's movements and they've had each other's back for so many years now that there's very little conversation when they actually need to go to work.
We were trying to kind of figure out how to signal one another, but we also wanted it to not look too prepared. So we were just like, let's wing it. And he did a sniff. And I was like, that's my cue. And we separated and we threw the axes. And then we came back together and we were like, that timing was perfect. And he was like, I gave you a sniff. And I was like, yes, you did. We are such badasses.
We'll see when the CGI arrows get put in. We'll see how badass I am.
There are many things that can be secreted within something that looks very simple. In the case of the wall, there are blades that spin out from within it. There are also secret doors at the base that allow for our troops to emerge quickly and then run back into the wall and have the wall seal itself over.
A lot of the grandness of the shots and the spectacle, we're dealing with green screen. It's always a challenge, but there's plenty there to root you and give you the scope and the scale of the world you're in.
这样的设计就是要有一定的出处去完成它。举例来说，就是那个射的箭上绑一个火药筒、火药箭。我们都知道中国过去有这种火药箭。好，射的时候要点，对吧？所以你还要设计这个点火绳儿，便携式点火绳儿。那点火绳儿你就可以追溯到中国过去的檀香。 一炷香，这火药武器本身里边就有很多这样的历史知识。
What happened? What happened?
The third battle is the coup de grace of the actual film, where everybody's fighting in unison and from everyone's gotten over their past differences of East meets West and all fighting styles are different, that everybody amalgamates into one and becomes a team.
In the third battle, William decides to join the fight to save the world from the Taotei, which leads him then to becoming one of the Nameless Order. Black powder becomes central to the third battle, not only as a weapon to be used to destroy the Taotai, but also as a fuel they use to transport them.
The balloons, in fact, are driven by black powder exploding over hot flames and obviously making hot air to float the balloons, and that's how our whole army travels. And Lin Mei and some of our other soldiers have explosive arrows and explosive grenades and spears with explosive weapons on them.
制片方给我安排了非常多而且很密集的一些课程，大概早上会有3-4个小时，体能，然后武术技巧，一些武术套路，运用不同的道具。这个收获是在我拍摄当中，我一下就感受到，哇，原来一切都是值得的。
我一开始我就提出来，我说我觉得你们应该破一次长城，突破一次长城，打到皇宫去。哎，他们就觉得啊，这个想法太好了，这个太有意思了，这个在结尾是完全变了。然后我们就杀回马枪，回去救汴梁。他一直饕餮大的汴梁，在皇宫里头大开杀戒。那好，那我们就要突破回去救，这就在视觉上就多了很多不一样的感觉。
When the Taotai bridge the wall and go to the imperial palace, strategist Wong also then becomes a soldier himself and gears up with the ignition devices, grenades, the lot, and goes for a last chance effort. Strategy being that once they've captured a Taotai, they attach grenades to it and send it back to the queen, delivering the explosives right to the center of the Taotai.
We have all the tools to work with, but also a lot will be sweetened in the special effects and visual effects later.
你是演的时候要想象，我们这个戏比我们以前拍的戏更需要想象力。
We're at the top of the pagoda and we run out of exploding arrows, and we have one insane idea that just might work. She has the idea, I'm just kind of along for the ride. You didn't feel that? Yeah. You like launched yourself. It's really good. It's really good.
Our wall looks just like the Great Wall of China, but when the need arises, it transforms into a weapon itself. Crane rigs rise, the eagle nests come up, and trebuchets are there.
We basically made the very first floor like giant turbines that powered all of these mechanisms. And you get up into the next level and you start seeing blade carts that send these blades outside the walls to cut off the Taotai's heads. You get up to the next level and you see trebuchets.
Generally, a trebuchet sits on the ground and operates on the ground. Ours are attached to the side of the wall and are fed from within the wall. They shoot cannonballs that are 90 centimeters in diameter. They're huge. So we have gargantuan ones.
Going up, and we find the flying rigs, which are for the crane warriors, has a beautiful crane on the top. And when it opens up like a fan, the fan is almost like feathers. And on the very top floor, we have the eagle's nests that are down underground and then pull up.
Some of the weapons used by the army are sort of beyond their time. They might be weapons that would be considered to be futuristic in their own time. We have large multi-fire crossbow machines that really look like huge, powerful cannons.
There's a machine with 4 bows on it and a mechanized system of firing repeatedly from magazines, hundreds of bolts per minute. It's based on a historical weapon. We've just made it much larger and to look more visually powerful so that it is more convincing that it could take down a beast like a Taotai.
As our story progresses, the use of black powder gets more and more prominent. We start to see that they have explosive arrows and explosive grenades and spears with explosive weapons on it.
The Eagle Corps have explosive arrows, which are essentially like a stick of dynamite. Cylinders of bamboo packed tight with black powder with a fuse, and they're used in conjunction with the ignition device. The ignition device is located on the left wrist of the archer, so it's positioned so that at full draw the fuse would connect with the ignition device, so that he doesn't have an extra move that he has to perform to light the fuse.
All of the weaponry on the wall is designed for each of the animal cores, and each of the weapons has characteristics of those animals, much like their costumes do.
The amount of talent and creativity and craftsmanship here is extraordinary.
Production design is really doing incredible work. It kind of beggars the imagination what he's been able to do here.
The interior of the set is a bit of a fantasy, but we mixed it into the real scientific achievements of China in the 11th century. And in doing research, we found there was this amazing observatory built in China, which is actually in the shape of a pyramid.
The set sort of grew around the idea that it was a repository of knowledge. And so there's scientific equipment, there's medical equipment, there's history books, inventions.
All of these things that were created in the 11th century in China. If you'll look, you'll see the world's first seismograph, the world's first compass, early printing presses, a model of a water clock.
Strategist Wong keep this history of the Taotea, and he does that by using these scrolls that we made. They tell the progression and the story of how the Taotea came into existence, how they fought them, things that have happened.
The Taotai design could be seen in a lot of real objects done at that time. So we extrapolated that imagery out and we put it into moldings around the base of the steps, around pillars. The centerpiece of the set is a giant hand-carved wooden Taotai.
The Imperial Palace, 26 weeks of work to build that set. An enormous set, and it's hugely elaborate and colorful and gilded.
What we feel would be a very accurate representation of Song Dynasty architecture. One item that might be a little different is the dragon carving behind the throne, which we actually took one panel and broke it into 3 to give it more dimension and make it more dramatic.
In Imperial China, the only one that could wear a dragon was the emperor. And the dragon on the emperor has to have 5 fingers. The director wanted this very young emperor to look like a walking jewel, overprotected by all his retinue. We hand embroidery, and then we hand applique with metallic coil, semi-precious stones. It looks good from afar, but if you look at it up close, you'll see that it's a labor of love. 18 hands on top of the costume, embroidering sections, then also applying more details on top of it. We did probably 50 sketches for the Crane Corps. Their costume is blue because when the Taote looks at them, it was a way of camouflage with the blue sky. For every costume, we have about maybe 18 elements to it, and there's a reason for every decoration and ornament in every costume.
I think once we get Maya's costumes in there and the lighting is put on, it's going to be pretty extraordinary, I think.
She's brilliant, designed for an entire army. Hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of extras, all in full battle kit. It really sticks out. It's really impressive.